As the head of a humanitarian non-governmental organization committed to protecting vulnerable young people and women through the means of education, the role and importance of education is obvious to me, to my colleagues, to our founders, to our board, and to all of our partners. Young people who have been displaced may be refugees or internally displaced. They may have fled violence, armed conflict, or natural disasters. All these young people need the tools by which they can overcome the threats of their unstable and fragile environments. These young people may be vulnerable, but they all aspire to have the means to help their communities get out of the crisis and reach for peace and prosperity.
このような難民となってしまったような若者たちは確かに社会的には弱い立場に置かれているかもしれません。しかしながら何らかの形で自分たちのコミュニティを支援したいという考えは皆持っているはずです。危機から抜け出し、そしてまた平和と繁栄を勝ち取りたいと皆望んでいます。
Clearly in emergency situations, young people need safe shelter, water, food, clothing, and medical care, to name just a few of the basic life-saving essentials. However, in today's world, crises involving displacement tend to last for years and often decades. Basic life-saving necessities are no longer sufficient, and education is not a luxury, as some used to label it. Education is a life-saving basic need. Just imagine for a minute that you have fled your home because it was no longer safe, and that you succeeded in crossing the border between your home country and a neighboring country. Or you managed to find enough money to pay for sailing the sea, to reach a place which would allow you to continue to survive.
ちょっと皆さん想像していただきたいと思います。自分が住んでいる国がもう非常に危険な状態になって、その国から逃れなければいけない、難民になってしまったとしましょう。で、なんとか国境まで行って、自分の国から隣国に抜けられたとします。あるいは少々お金があったので難民ボートに乗って海を渡って、とりあえず生きながらえることができる国に着いたとしましょ
う。Possibly you end up in a refugee camp or in the outskirts of a foreign city, where you may stay for the next 5, 10, or most likely 20 years. The average time spent for a refugee in exile is now 20 years, according to our colleagues at UNHCR. Education starts with learning the necessary languages of the host country, having access to psychosocial support, understanding what services are available to you as a refugee or asylum seeker, or simply staying a few hours per day in the safety of a school and having perhaps a meal, will quickly become the priorities of a young refugee. Once we are past the stage of an emergency or of the humanitarian crisis, we start to become and need, as a refugee, more complex, more developmental, durable solutions.
で、こうした国際紛争がますます激化し、そしてまた難民の置かれている状況が複雑になればなるほどですね、国際的な支援というものはますます必要になってきます。
This includes access to higher levels of education, and possibly going from primary to secondary school, or even to tertiary school, or to learn a trade, perhaps to start a small business. Undoubtedly, you and your family as asylum seekers or refugees will need to have the awareness and financial means to take the right life decisions, such as staying away from drugs, prostitution, gangs, and armed groups. We hope that our refugees, our young refugees especially, will become actors of positive social change, and we will need to be able to create and manage an environment in which they can create their own sustainable, independent, self-reliant associations and projects and raise awareness within their communities and of their circumstances and their communities, and make the rest of the world aware of what they are experiencing. All of these essential aspects of life are routine and natural for us here in our parts of the world. And they are obtained through education, whether it's formal or non-formal education. As humans, knowledge is our tool of choice, and this is the more valid situation in fragile contexts and in crises where the young refugees and asylum seekers are living. So our objective at RET International is to protect the young people, to provide them formal, non-formal education at the basic level, but also at the tertiary level. We are able to do this through the generous program that is with UNHCR called the DAFI program, provided by the German Federal Foreign Office Albert Einstein funds. And RED manages these DAFI funds in Africa in the various countries where we work. In many ways, these young refugees attending university in the countries where they found refuge are quite similar to you. They are the bright young students who will attend attending the Sacred Heart University, the Institute for Sustainable Futures, and the students in the countries, in the 29 countries where we work, in Africa, in Latin America, in Asia, are quite similar in their desires and aspirations as you. Obviously, the academic level, the infrastructure and networks of a refugee student in Bujumbura, Burundi, or N'Djamena, Chad, do not reach the same heights as the University of the Sacred Heart. Nevertheless, the sense of empowerment that higher education provides is the same throughout the world. The ability to dream of a future of higher education is what keeps the young refugees going and hopeful to survive their years of immense challenges and difficulties. Hope springs eternal. Hope gives the reason to continue living. Throughout my life, I've always considered education as a continuum. I completed my MBA, and while in private sector in the German and US automotive sectors, I thought that I would study corporate law. I was admitted into a program to earn my Juris Doctor on 2 occasions, but both times I had to decline the opportunities because the president of Volkswagen at the time offered me promotions inside Volkswagen and Audi, and respectively, both times, that prevented me from continuing my education. So instead, I moved higher in my career ladder, becoming executive vice president in the private sector by age 40. By 41, having formed a corporate foundation in the telecommunications sector for the benefit of handicapped children, I decided to leave the private sector and join the humanitarian sector. My corporation was a major donor to UNHCR, and that became my first steps towards RET.